Hey everybody, this is Jordan from PictureMonk.com, and welcome to episode 72, I believe that's what it is. This is actually probably going to be the last episode for the year for me, and I'll tell you why in just a quick second. But what we got going on in this episode is I'm going to talk about printing, as you can tell by the title, printing and kind of the best photos of 2016, and also a very thoughtful comment left by somebody on one of the interviews that I did a while back. I kind of picked up on it, read the comment, and thought I'd give my reply on the podcast just in case other photographers out there are feeling the same way this person is about their work and their business. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the podcast, and that is going to be printing. So I had a question come through, an email come through from Jeff, who is a part of the PictureMonk Nation Facebook page. If you want to join that, go to PictureMonk.com/nation, and you can subscribe to the Facebook page there. Just post photos and all that kind of fun stuff there. So it's a good place to show off your work and kind of get feedback and just post some really cool stuff. But Jeff asked a question about printing, and so I kind of wanted to run through his question here, or his email, and kind of give my thoughts on it and a little bit about printing. So Jeff writes, I was wondering if you have ever covered anything about aspect ratio on your podcast, and if you haven't, it would be a good topic, at least for me. I often wonder what ratio I should be shooting in, and does it really matter? That's the key point right there. But for the most part, I shoot to post on Instagram or Facebook, but I like to print my keeper shots in an 8x10 print and sometimes 11x14. If I'm really feeling the shot, I'm shooting in RAW with a Fuji X3 X30, and I go through Adorama pics, which is good. That's who I use as well. And I don't know the difference. I don't know if the information makes a difference in aspect ratio, but it doesn't hurt to add in there. So aspect ratio is kind of a tricky thing when it comes to photography. I actually have a chart on the show notes for this page that is very helpful for me, and this helped me kind of figure what aspect ratio I should be shooting in, because a lot of cameras nowadays will allow you to shoot in many different aspect ratios. You can actually choose 1:1 or 4:3 or something like that. But you can choose that. So which one is probably the best one to shoot at, and which one is kind of not as common. And so first of all, one of the most popular print sizes of aspect ratio is a 3:2 aspect ratio. 3:2, this is on that chart if you want to go look at it at picturemonk.com/PMP 072. There we go. So the chart shows that the 3:2 is actually a very popular size for printing. So if your camera can shoot a 3:2, that would be ideal for mainly printing if you want to do that. And so 3:2 is kind of the aspect ratio for 4:6 print, 6:9, 8:12, 10:15, 12:18, 16:24, and 20:30. Back in the day when I started taking photos and I got them printed, 8x10s were like the main photo that everybody wanted, the main size photo. Almost all frames are made at 8x10s, and those, you just go get an 8x10 photo, pop a cheap 8x10 frame on there, and you got a good photo. But the real kicker for me about that was, since I was shooting in a 3:2, I didn't realize that when I shot it, everything was getting cropped off on the sides. Well, not everything, but I was taking what would normally be, like it says on here, an 8x12. I was taking an 8x12 and shoving it into a 8x10. And so realistically, the stuff on the sides, on the left and right, were getting cut off. I didn't notice that until I got a photo in the mail where I printed off a photo, and there was actually some key information on I think it was the right side, and it was cut off. And so I didn't know why. And then I started looking at aspect ratio and started looking at what I should be shooting at. And that's when I kind of found out that if you want to shoot for your sensor size, at that point it was a sensor size, but now you can set your camera to shoot many different sizes. If you want to shoot for a specific aspect ratio, you need to know that you're going to be printing. If you want the full photo, you're going to need to printing at that that specific aspect ratio for that print. And so, like I said, 3x2 is probably the most popular. You have a 4x3, which is actually really popular as well. You have one of the most popular sizes printed for a 4x3 is actually a 9x12. So it's just 1 inch taller than an 8x12, which would be a 3x2 aspect ratio. Another popular one, made popular by Instagram, obviously, is the 1x1. Everybody knows 1x1. It's any number and any number. So it's 6x6, 7x7, 8x8. It's all of those. That's another popular one. And you can actually, some cameras do allow you to shoot in a 1x1. Obviously, the iPhones and Androids and stuff like that allow you to do that as well. So it's a pretty popular thing. But when you're shooting and you really want to nail down that print size, it's going to be most likely a 3x2 is probably the most popular one and probably the most easy to use one. The only drawback is when you go to find a frame, if you're going to get a real nice frame for it, then not a lot of people make 10x15 frames, or I have seen a couple 12x18s, and I have seen a couple 8x12s, but 10x15 is not really a popular size. There are 16x24 frames, there are 20x30 frames. And so, you can do that. So if you're going to go the framing route, then that's where the print size actually comes into play. So because obviously if you want to have a nice print and you want to frame it, then definitely making sure you have a frame that fits it without getting a custom frame. But a lot of people don't really opt in for the printing, the framing aspect of it. That's one reason I really like Adorama. And this is not sponsored by Adorama whatsoever, but I do use their service. That's one reason I like them, is because they also offer the metal prints. They offer metal paper prints, which is usually the ones that I print on, but they also offer metal aluminized prints. And so it's printed directly on metal, any size that you want, and it comes ready to hang. You just pop a nail in the wall, hang it on there, and you're good to go. And so that's one reason why I really like them. The other reason why I really like Adorama Pix is when you order their prints. I know many other people might do this, but I've really found it very easy to use on Adorama. Is when you order their prints, it tells you that if you want to fill the frame, if you're trying to order a photo size that is going to be it's going to crop off your image, it'll show you the parts that's going to be cropped off. It will even allow you to move the photo over just a little bit to maybe include information that is going to be cropped off. Or you can tell it to do a full bleed, or you can tell it to do a bleed, or to leave space on the bottom and the top, kind of like a widescreen view where there's a black bar on the top, black bar on the bottom, that sort of thing. Another thing when it comes to printing is obviously when you export the photo from Lightroom or Photoshop, having the right PPI or DPI, having that in there is kind of a key thing for me. It didn't used to be where I would pay attention to that, but now paying attention a little bit more. I know some photographers out there say you don't really need to pay attention. You don't actually really need to put in the PPI or DPI resolution for your camera, but I found it actually makes a very big difference. One photo I remember printing a long time ago, which I actually have rolled up in a tube. I looked up that file before this episode to try to get a little bit more grasp on the stuff that I printed in the past, and it's rolled up in a tube. And I looked at it, and it was a very large print. It was, I think I want to say it was like a 42 by 36 or something. It was very large. And it was just printed on regular paper, nothing special. But I looked up that order, and it was actually printed at 150 DPI or PPI. It was printed at 150. I probably could have bumped it up to 300, but the file would have been so large and all this kind of stuff. But I looked at a photo that was printed similar size. I think it was a 24 by 36. And it was printed at 300 PPI or DPI, and the clarity was so much better. The detail was so much better. The information that was supplied into the file was so much better that it looked perfect. But when you have something that's printed at 150, it's not meant to be viewed within 10 inches or so from your face. And so the PPI or DPI really matter when it comes to that stuff. So I always change mine to 300. That's ideal for printing. A lot of people do say that you don't really need to worry about it, but I always make sure all my stuff is set to 300 when it is sent out for print. That's one really key thing for me. Now, obviously, if you're shooting for Facebook or Instagram, none of this stuff really matters. You can actually get away with a lot when it comes to viewing online and just putting your photos online, especially now because a lot of people are only seeing your photos online, and so you're kind of getting away. But that's where I want to kind of roll this part of the podcast into kind of the best of the best photos part of the content, the podcast, because that is what's going to happen probably at the, let's see, what was my calendar at? Let me look at my calendar real quick. I had it written down. Let's see, the month. Here we go. So today, the day this podcast is going to be released is December 6th, and so I want to kind of challenge the folks that are on the PictureMonk Nation Facebook page to kind of post a couple of your best of the best photos of the year. And the reason why I'm doing this is because my partner in crime, my dad, and I have discussed this. I don't know if he remembers it, but we've discussed actually getting a book printed of our best of the best in each year going forward. And so I don't know if we talked about a certain amount of photos, but I'm not going to really limit mine just yet. I'm going to pull every photo that I think is print worthy, and I'm going to get a very nice book printed. I'm going to actually spend some money to get a really nice book, not a soft cover book. It's actually going to be a very good book, probably from Adorama Pics, which I really enjoy. So I'm going to get a book printed, and I'm going to make sure I include my best of the best, just so I can have something to look forward to or look back on going forward and see. It's kind of a way to see how much progression has been made. I did this in a video last year, which is cool. I'll probably still do the same thing, but I do want to have a physical copy. So that's kind of where I want to roll in this. But I want you guys to post your photos to the Nation page to see what you guys think are your best photos. I think it'd be a fun thing to do. And so if you post there, just know that, it's got to be your best. I don't know. I'm actually trying to think of my best right now, and I can't really think of one that I'm just totally in love with. But it can be any topic, wildlife, real estate, portraits, landscape, anything. It can be anything. Whatever you deem is your best work of 2016, I would love to see it, and I know the folks in the Nation would also love to see it as well. So it'd be really fun to do that. So I'm challenging you guys to put those out there so we can see some of your best work. All right, so before we get into the widget of the week, which is actually going to be the comment that I told you about earlier in the episode, I want to talk about Lumineer. Lumineer is a fantastic software from MacFun. I've used it. I've actually used it today before recording this podcast. My wife and I were taking a photo for our Christmas cards to send out, and I was shooting the photo up against a backlit situation, and so I knew I needed as much information I could use to bring out all the detail in our faces, since it's going to be backlit. And I could have popped a flash on there, but honestly, the batteries were dead in my flash, and I didn't have any more, so I had to opt with just doing natural light. And so I chose to edit the photo in Lumineer, MacFun's Lumineer software. I chose to edit that because I knew that it would bring back more information for me. It handles data way better than Lightroom in a lot of different situations. So I want you guys to go ahead and try Lumineer out. It's a very, very great software, very cool editing software. So all you got to do is go to picturemonk.com/Lumineer. That's picturemonk.com/LUMINAR. And just download the free trial there. It's a really good software. And let me know what you think about it. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. So I thank Lumineer for supporting this podcast. Okay, so here is the comment I was talking about. It's a very long one. He kind of touched on a bunch of stuff that was talked about in that interview, but I want to go over just a couple things here. One of the things he mainly kept hitting on was the cost of maintaining a business, and this basically stemmed from me talking about how when I do real estate jobs, my pricing at the highest point usually is $150 per job. And so he talked about that and gave some numbers, saying, for example, if you wanted to maintain a $60,000 a year salary, how many shoots would you have to do to make $60,000 at 150? And doing that doesn't include, benefits that would have to be be supplied for when quitting a job, because this is all stemming from trying to do real estate photography. In my case, real estate photography full time. And so I'm going to try to blow through some of this because it is a very long comment. So just stick with me for this. He writes, as a former studio owner, I'd like to offer some feedback. You will never be able, that's the first thing I don't like, is saying you will never be able to. You will never be able to make photography a full-time job while charging the rates that you do and spending the time you do on the back end. And some of this is definitely in context to what the interview was, so I'll explain that just a little bit. On top of that, you're really harming the full-time photographer who are trying to make a living. You are not charging a rate that would allow you to pay for overhead for your business. Business, equipment, insurance, health insurance, rent, utilities, buying and maintaining your equipment, taxes. I can point you in the directions to websites, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to worry about that part. Think about the salary. That is your day job. How much of that goes to taxes and insurance? What the cost is to maintain a home and a family? You mentioned looking at buying a new home. I did mention that in the interview. Let's say, for example, you make $6,000 a year. How many jobs would you have to do for 150 to clear a $60,000 a year salary? Just a rough estimate is you would need to generate at least $90,000 to $100,000 in jobs to clear a salary and make your costs. That's 600 real estate jobs at 150 brings in $90,000. So let me touch on a couple of things right there. There are a couple things that I don't agree with some of these statements. Saying that I would have to, I would have to clear $90,000 to $100,000 to clear a business to make $60,000. That is all being presumptive that I technically want to make $60,000. What I'm obviously it would be nice to make a steady living like that, but what I'm trying to get at is when you mention that taxes, where was that part at? Health insurance, rent, utilities, buying, maintaining equipment, all of that stuff. Even though my business is almost non-existent, just because I don't do enough jobs to actually clarify the business. Technically, by the U.S. government standards, I do have to clarify it as a business because I'm making money, and all of that money is taxed. It's so small that my so small business is ruining it for other full-time photographers is somewhat of a joke. That's like saying that. That's like saying that a guy on YouTube who is doing a video blog per day is harming a very popular guy on YouTube for doing the exact same thing. It's not the same thing. Everything is in context. Everything is based on that person's situation. And so, for example, my wife and we are very financially aware of what our situation is. So we have no debt minus a house. And so if honestly, if I wanted to start this job and try to do it full time, I would probably have a little bit better situation than somebody who has mounds of debt who wants to try to do this full time. Not saying that I want to do it full time right now, because I probably could not. I know I could not sustain that. But we are in a better situation as from some folks that would do that. And so another thing he talked about was trying to, I would never be able to maintain my $150 because let me finish that part, because there's another one down here. Another thought, this is kind of what I was touching on. Another thought is you have a Canon camera. Oh, that's not it. Where is it at? I just saw it. Yeah, there it is. On the other end is with all the extra editing you do, and you have taken the time to actually put in the job and dividing it into $150 is in real hours. How many photographers who look at a realistic finding of their work make less than minimum wage? So my response to that would be something similar to the effect of, most of the time I'm at a place, and it's a normal size home, it probably takes me 35 to 40 minutes to photograph the home. If I'm being sort of lazy about it. Most of the time I can get in there and get out and just be done with it with that, 30 minutes and just be done. And then I'll come home, I'll pop the photos on the computer, let them import into Lightroom, let it do a import preset to do all the things that I would normally do to my photos, and then hit each one of the photos, start as a keeper, hit each one of the photos, do some minimal edits, and then export them and then deliver them. All of that time takes between an hour and maybe an hour and 20, hour and 30, somewhere around. Let's just say hour and 30 just to be generous. So let's say an hour and 30. If you looked at it that way, I'm technically making almost $150 per hour. Technically, it could be considered that the drive time and doing all this kind of stuff. I'm making an hourly wage that is, way higher than a minimum wage. However, I'm not being consistent in it. Me being consistent and getting more jobs is not the matter of what I'm charging. Me being consistent is me trying to network and promote myself. So this is kind of where the frustration comes in, because again, when you see real estate photographers, they've been doing it for a very long time. Most of them have been doing it for a really long time. Even photographers in general, to build up a client base. I'm doing the jobs only by the people who find my website. I'm doing no outside marketing whatsoever. That will change coming in the new year, but I'm doing no outside marketing. So my hourly rate is actually very competitive with the other real estate photographers in my area. I'm doing the job on the middle to upper higher end of my area. So that's what I don't get about saying 150 is not a good price to charge, because let's say you live in New York or Los Angeles, California, and you say you're a $150 real estate photography, and you have really good work. People are going to use the crap out of you because you're super cheap. But if you live in like a small town called Podunk, Kansas, or something, I don't know, I'm making that up. But if you live in a very small town with like 3 people that are in the population of 3, doing 150 is not going to be. It's the same price, but it's a different location. You have to be area dependent on your location to try to figure out what you should charge. And I've done research about all the real estate photographers in my area, even the people who are portrait photographers who say they do real estate photography. I've calculated that in, and 150 has become the norm for this area. And another thing, my last point to this is just where this is where it touches kind of my PictureMonk audience here, is that he's saying that, let's see where it is. You can't keep giving away free edits and videos. Think about it. Your images are selling a blah, blah, blah home, a very expensive home. In the grand scheme of things, $150 is nothing. So, the only part that I really cared about in that sentence was you can't keep doing free edits and videos. If I've read it correctly, I think he's talking about doing stuff for you guys. How I like to do the mimic videos. I give away free presets and stuff like that. I do little videos on YouTube. It's not a bit. That's not part of the business, and it's just something fun to do to give back to the audience that chooses to listen to me on a roughly weekly basis. So, saying that I can't do that, I don't really make sense. That doesn't really make sense to me, because I'm just trying to do it for you guys who want to listen to my weird voice talk about photography. That's basically it. And so I know it's kind of a weird thing to pop on the end of a podcast, but I just thought it'd be something to show that the struggles, as they would say, the struggles are real. So the struggles are real when it comes to trying to defend your business and defend your choices for your business, especially photography, because it's an art. People do it. There's super low end photographers, there's crazy high end photographers, and there's a whole bunch of people in between. And so defending your position is kind of one of the things that you're going to have to do. So that's all I want to talk about before we end the podcast. But let me just tell you, since it's probably going to be the last episode for 2016, let me just tell you that there's some things coming up that will probably affect the podcast and maybe the YouTube channel that are in the works. And so what's going to happen is, as I kind of mentioned before, me and my wife are moving. We're moving to a new house, and I'm actually going to have a legitimate work area, because right now I'm sitting in a dining room with a desk, and so I don't have any room to kind of do the stuff I envisioned for the podcast when I first started, or the stuff I envisioned for the YouTube channel when I first started. But now I will have more of an opportunity to do that, and so I'm going to be putting a lot of different things together. The podcast will probably change in regards to that. I might even get back to doing the video podcast and actually have it be a legitimate video, sort of interview style, I guess. There's just going to be a lot of things that are coming different, and it just takes a little bit of time because, I'm doing a full-time job, I'm doing this, and I'm doing another part-time job as well. So I'm trying to get all of that taken care of. But I do want to thank you guys for joining me, just joining me through this journey. If you guys listen to all the podcasts, God bless you, because I don't even want to listen to all the podcasts. But thank you for joining me through this whole thing, and thank you for those who have joined the Nation page, who post there regularly. All you guys are great. I really enjoy seeing that stuff come through, and I always look forward to that when new images pop up. So thank you guys for supporting me. Thank you guys who bought the presets for Black Friday this past week. There was a good turnout for that. And again, that just helps the show grow a little bit at a time. So thank you guys for joining me this year for the podcast. And I'll try to see you guys later. And I will be putting I still will be putting videos on YouTube. I do have a lot of videos ready to go, and so I'm not really recording new stuff, but it's geared up and ready to go. So still will be posting that. But before I keep rambling, I'm going to go ahead and get off here, and I'll catch you guys in the new year with a brand new sort of show, and we'll just see how it goes. We'll just have fun with it. So thank you guys for joining me in this podcast. Have a Merry Christmas, have a Happy Holidays, have a good New Year, and I'll see you next year.